This could be the bike that saves Harley Davidson's bacon. Yeah, there's quite a bit of heat kicking out from the engine now. My knees are getting a bit warm. Barbecued knee, anyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today you find us back again at Leeds Harley Davidson to review this. The Harley Davidson Pan America. Arguably the most important bike that they've built in decades. Okay, right, straight on the bike. Now, first thing I can tell you is got adjustable seat height. I've got it on the lowest setting, and from my point of view, it's just a little lower than my GSA. So instantly it feels a little bit more, a little bit less intimidating, shall we say. And it's not as wide either. So it's obviously got a smaller petrol tank. But it feels suitably substantial. Switch on the ignition, the suspension has already dropped down. So I was sort of on the high end of the balls of my feet, and now I'm on the low end of the balls of my feet, and I'm a 32-inch inside leg, 5'8" rider. Okay, enough of the talking. Let's fire her up. Okay, big V twin. A different sound than any other Harley. How are we doing for fuel? Just down at the bottom, fairly full. We've got it in road mode. It won't let me read the nuts off it. I guess that's because it's cold. Alright. Yeah, not as clunky as I thought it would be in first gear either. Okay. Alright, so here we are. Welcome on board the Pan America. Right, this is a relatively brand new bike insofar as it's not got a lot of miles on the clock. So obviously I'm not going to go banzai on it. Well, the first thing I'll do is I'll take it straight onto the motorway, and we'll just give it a little quick ride just to see what it's going to be like at speed. Because let's face it, if people are going to buy this bike, there's a huge possibility that they're going to be spending a lot of time on it touring. But that windscreen is doing a pretty good job. I'm not feeling any buffeting. This is at the lowest setting. I'm not feeling any buffeting on my head. All I'm getting is just a little bit on my shoulders, which is just coming from the side of the screen. So that's kind of a win-win. I like that. It feels planted. It feels stable. Exactly what it should do. Not the lightest bike in the world to sort of change lanes. You've got to give it a little bit of input. 6th gear, 4,000 revs, no vibrations. It's a big V twin, and they're notorious for being vibey. This one, pretty smooth. You get the feeling you could do an awful lot of miles in this saddle without any fatigue. There's nothing coming through the handlebars, no vibrations coming through the handlebars, no vibrations coming through the seat either. The seat itself feels like there's quite a bit of padding in there. It's not hard, it's just very, very well padded. The foot pegs, it's a nice neutral position. I've got a nice bend in my knee, slightly more relaxed than, let's say, sports tourer position. That would all point to its touring capability comfort. It feels like it's got an awful lot of shove, but it's smooth. It's not KTM style when it wants to try and throw you off the back of the bike. The handlebars are slightly swept back. You find yourself sat up quite nicely with a relatively straight back, and because you sat up, it's very, very easy to take the lifesaver looks over your shoulder. I get the feeling that if you're stepping into the world of big adventure bikes, this would be probably one of the most forgiving, based on my initial experience. What was interesting, just thinking back on it now, when I first started the engine up and there was like a horrible racket, and I thought, Christ, that doesn't sound good. But apparently what that is the valves. Because of the way that they're seated and the valve lashing, the oil hadn't got around the top section of the engine, the top section of the valves. So that's where the noise came in. But the second that oil gets around there, it calms down. And it doesn't take very long for that to happen. And of course the beauty is, there's no valve servicing, no valve adjustments. You're going to save a fortune on that. That's clever. Just having a little look down at the switch gear and everything that's in front of me. It looks like the brake lever and the clutch lever are completely adjustable. Always a good sign. On here we've got heated grips, which are standard. And I know it's a warm day, but in the interests of you, dear viewer, let's see what they're like. Well, I can't really feel a lot of heat coming through, but there is some starting to come through. The problem for me is that was taking a long time to get warm. I think possibly they could heat up a bit quicker. Right, let's see what this adaptive ride height's like. So I'm coming to a stop. I didn't feel it move. I didn't feel it lower. I just know it did. Let's see what she's like for filtering. Well, because it's great at slow speeds, it seems well balanced. I don't have any problems filtering either. That suspension is uncanny. I know in my head that it works, that it's lowering itself down when I come to a stop. But for the life in me, I can't feel it. Alright, let's see if I can find somewhere to pull over so that we can have a look around the bike. Where is the side stand? Oh, it's quite far back. No, that's the centre stand. Oh, I see. So this is it, isn't it? I've just noticed though. Keyless entry, but you still need a key for the petrol tank. I don't know why they do that. Doesn't make sense. Alright, I'll get the other camera out. Let's have a walk around. Alright, so here she is then. Harley Davidson's Pan America 1250S. A bike that first came onto the radar in 2018, but then due to Harley Davidson's reshuffle, people were starting to panic and it was possible it wasn't going to turn up at all until 2020, when it was confirmed for 2021 release into the general public. So let's start at the front of the bike then. Well, what we've got on this particular model, we've got twin spotlights, 47mm upside down forks with the active suspension. Going down to the brakes, you've got twin 320mm rotors with Brembo calipers, and they're 4-pot calipers. What I have noticed just while I'm down here at the front, and I think this is maybe a little bit of a mishap, you've got the battery and the regulator rectifier at the front, and that's in a position that's yeah, let's say it's susceptible to damage, but we do know that Harley Davidson do a proper skid plate on there, so I would suggest that would probably be a good option to spend some money on. Let's go back up to the tank. It's a 21, just over a 21 litre tank, and I think Harley say it's good for around about 43, the mid 40s anyway, to the gallon, so you've got a decent range on there. That wouldn't be a problem. Crash bars for your engine protection, which is good. And then this is the engine, the 1250cc, I think it's 1252cc Revolution Max engine. It's a 60-degree V-twin, pumping out 150 horsepower and I think about 94 newton meters of torque. Very usable, very tractable, and not scary at all. This bike is Harley Davidson's demo bike. It's seen some use, but look at the colour of those pipes. I think they're fantastic. Go a little bit further back into the suspension again. You've got the part of the trick suspension at the rear as well. Foot pegs are a good size, plenty of rubber on there for vibration damping, but you've also got the option to take them off, and if you want to go off-road, looks like there's plenty of grip there as well. Rear pegs for your rear passenger, let's have a look at those. Yeah, they're a decent size as well. I would imagine there's a lot of room to get some purchase on there. The exhaust itself, massive, but as in Harley Davidson's tradition, you've got the option, you can put a Screaming Eagle exhaust pipe on there, which I'm sure sounds phenomenal. And at the rear brake, you've got, I think that's a twin pot caliper and a 280mm disc. On the rear, you've got a standard 17-inch wheel, and on the front, you've got a 19-inch wheel. So that's right in keeping with the adventure style. LED lights all around. And if we go into the back, there's some lovely attention to detail, the Harley Davidson badge. The one thing I do like about Harley Davidson is their attention to detail. I think it's second to none. Let's go to the seating. Well, you've got a relatively decent sized seat for your pillion, and very much like the front seat, there's an awful lot of padding there. It's chain driven, so traditionally, again, we're not barking up the same tree as your BMWs. We're not going for the shaft drive. Obviously, the one advantage of that, it helps keep the weight down. And this bike weighs in, I think it's around about 258 kilos in its running order. A centre stand comes as standard, and that's going to be great, obviously, for chain maintenance. Straight down to the gearbox itself, 6-speed gearbox, and it works wonderfully, albeit with the omission of the quick shifter, which, as I said, I do think it would work on a bike like this because it's got some get up and go about it. Giving it the spoke wheels where you can run this bike on tubeless tyres, which is, in my eyes, that's a great idea for off-roading, but I'm no off-road specialist. The one thing that I'm not too keen on is these plastic hand covers. There's quite a few adventure bikes now that have just got these. You know, for my money, I would go with something a bit more substantial as stock, but I would imagine there's going to be aftermarket stuff readily available in the not too distant future. And that's a 6.8-inch TFT screen with a whole host of, a whole plethora of information in there. There's your screen. Like I say, it's adjustable, a few different settings, there's some nice detents on there, and it does provide some good wind protection. The looks are subjective, aren't they? And I think that's probably one of the talking points about this bike. Shall we get back on it and go for another ride? Okay, let's go. Alright, so now that I've been on the bike a little while, let's start with the riding position. Very familiar, coming off a GS and having ridden a few adventure bikes recently. This sits right in that bracket very comfortably. The handlebars are nicely spaced. The mirrors have got great visibility all round. Barely seeing the edges of my elbows. Handlebars are quite nice up. Looking at the clamp, I suspect there may be a bit of adjustment. Not sure on that. Possibly. Foot pegs, nice position. My knees are not too high. And the seat itself, I would say this is right up there with one of the comfiest seats that I've sat on a motorbike. That engine. Right, let's talk about the engine. It's a V-twin, so naturally you're going to get some punch. But unlike a Boxer, it's slightly higher up. You're never going to get a V-twin engine as low as a Boxer engine. And because of that, it doesn't feel as neutral in corners in the twisty stuff. So the handling isn't as natural as, let's say, on a GS. But that's not to decry its capabilities. It just feels slightly more top heavy than what I'm used to. But it's very flickable, and it's very manageable, and it's very predictable, which is a good thing, because Harley Davidson recognise that there is a market that they haven't tapped into, and they should have, and they have done. But they're also keen to get some new customers, and what they need is a bike that's going to be very approachable and not scary. You know, particularly if they're going for, let's say, inexperienced riders who are interested in an adventure bike. Well, this, for my money, is right up there with that criteria. It's an easy bike to ride. You've got 150 horsepower and 94 newton meters of torque, I think, which on paper sounds quite healthy, but in reality you have to ride these things rather than just look on a spec sheet. That's a healthy amount of power, but it's also delivered in a nice way, in a good way. It doesn't try and rip your arms off, it doesn't try and throw you off the back of the seat. It's very usable, progressive power, and when you switch the mode button from sport, which is what I'm in now, when you switch from sport to road, there is a noticeable difference. The bike becomes even more forgiving, more smooth. In probably, I would say, the road mode is the sweet spot. And then you can go to rain mode, which, having just experienced it, it's a little lackluster. I understand why they do it, because of traction, etc, etc, but that first initial turn of the throttle delivers nothing. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I'll leave that for you to decide. There's also off-road modes as well, whereby you can go into those and you can actually tune those to your liking, and you can also disengage the rear AVS, which for off-road purposes is a must. So I've been told. I'm not an off-roader, but that's what I've been told. The braking itself is linked, so you press the front brake, it actuates the front brake and the rear brake, and the rear brake the rear brake pedal, shall we say, that just actuates the rear brake itself. For my money, that's the way that link brakes should be done. Yeah, the front brake's got some stopping power, which is what you'd expect for a bike with brake discs and calipers this size. Having said that, there's no initial bite. It's just rather it's there, but you need to squeeze that handle quite a bit to get it to stop quickly. The rear brake itself, that's pretty good as rear brakes go. I've ridden bikes with a lot worse rear brakes than that. Feels like a very well balanced machine. So even at walking pace, it feels easy to manage and quite balanced, which is what I wasn't expecting with it being a twin. Harley Davidson seemed to have done a bit of magic with this, with the damping on this engine, because traditionally, as we all know, V-twins can be quite vibey, but there seems to be a lot of engine damping going in there to try and negate most of that, and for the most part they have done. You can ride it along at slow speeds as I'm doing now, and you know, it's very comfortable, it's very smooth, easy to ride. You get up to the motorway speeds, you know, you're getting into sort of 4,000 or 5,000 revs, and again the vibrations on it are way below what I expected. They're minimum vibrations. This is a brand new machine from the ground up, coming into a very well established market. But straight off the bat, if this is anything to go by where Harley Davidson are going to be going in the not too distant future, this is a hell of a machine. It's very well put together relative to it being a brand new bike. Yes, it's got its foibles, it's got its idiosyncrasies, but at the end of the day, you know that you're not just riding a generic adventure bike. This actually feels like a Harley, but not, because it's smoother, it's more refined. Maybe Harley customers are ready for that now. The seat itself, it's a very, well, let's say it's on the high side. by lowering the seat to its lowest position and lowering the suspension, the seat height can actually be lowered to under 800 millimeters on this top model, because it relies on the active suspension. You can't get it on the base model. And for an extra £600 as an option, because it's not standard, I think it's money very, very well spent. If you're a shorter rider, that personally I think is going to be one massive selling point. But the beauty of it is it works and you don't even know it's working. It's very subtle. That's all I can say about that. There's no point in trying to make it anything other than what it is. It's simple and it works. And why other companies never thought about it before Harley Davidson, I'll never know. There's enough boffins out there to have thought about it. So Harley, hats off to that. I do think that is a genuine game changer. The actual ride itself, you know, the suspension is fairly compliant. It's not magic carpet ride, but that's okay. You know, I do like the fact that you can get some feedback. You know, Britain's UK roads, it kind of takes them with a pinch of salt until the road gets really bad, and then it can be a bit jarring. The TFT screen itself is the best part of 7 inches, very clear for the most important bits: your speedo, your gear indicator, your fuel gauge, you know, your absolute key stuff. They're right there. The other bits on the side, I think they're a little bit on the small side. The indicator button, I feel, is in a bit of a strange position. For my money, it's it could do with a little bit more feedback. Yeah, you kind of question, is it switched on or have I switched it off? I don't know if it's self-cancelling. Not sure about that. The ABS, thankfully I've not had a need to use it, but the bike does have a 6-axis IMU, so you've got cornering ABS and traction control. Always useful, and kind of the de rigueur now for bikes of this sort of nature and this price. Talking about price, the base model starts at 14,000, and this particular model starts at approximately 15,500. Now, to have the suspension that does lower itself, that is an option. That's a £600 option. But also on this bike, it's got the spoked wheels, which I think really add to the look of it. They're a £400 option. And then, of course, you've got all the other goodies that you could put on with Harley anyway. Good old Harley Davidson tax, I think is what they call it. From a luggage point of view, you've got dedicated luggage for this bike. It comes with very subtly designed mounting points for the pannier system, unlike my GSA, which has got scaffolding all the way around it, which, you know, I've never been a fan of, but I know it's there and it works. This is a much cleaner design. For my money, yeah, why not? Why can't other bikes be like that? The gearbox itself, compared to the last Harley Davidson that I rode, which was the Breakout, and if you have a look at the click on the card at the top of the screen, that'll give you my impressions on that bike. The gearbox is much smoother. It feels like a massive step forward. It's almost like there's an awful lot of things on this bike that have been so well designed that they've actually finally brought Harley Davidson into the 21st century. Great usable torque from that V-twin, and it's got a distinct rumble to it as well, as V-twins have, but it's a Harley rumble. It's a Harley V-twin rumble. Let's get it onto a few twisties and see what it's like on there. Oh, that's got some shove. Yeah, that's got some get up and go. That's quite an exciting engine. In sport mode, that's when you know it's got 150 horsepower on tap and a good healthy dollop of torque. Great soundtrack as well. Come on pal, you're in a GTR. So the bike can hustle, no doubt about that. And I sadly have run out of time, so I've got to get this baby back. Thank you very much to Leeds Harley Davidson, to Alan and the rest of the crew down there for supplying us with this amazing machine. A big thanks. Here's to the next one. And if this is the first time that you've seen any of our videos, thank you very much for taking the time out to watch it. We hope it's tickled your taste buds. And if you have enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. We'd love to have you on board. And if you've got any questions, just leave them in the comment section below and we'll get back to you. And if we can't answer it, we'll find someone that can. Alright my friends, ride safe brothers and sisters. We shall see you on the next one. Ta-da!